The insanity defense is a legal concept used in criminal cases where the defendant argues that they should not be held legally responsible for their actions due to a severe mental illness or defect at the time the crime was committed. This defense is based on the principle that punishment is justified only if the individual has the mental capacity to understand the nature and wrongfulness of their actions. Definition of the insanity. Defense. The insanity defense asserts that the defendant was legally insane at the time of the crime and, therefore, lacked the requisite mental capacity to be held responsible for their actions. Legal insanity is distinct from medical insanity, focusing on the defendant's mental state as it pertains to legal culpability. Legal standards for insanity. Different jurisdictions apply various legal standards to determine insanity. The most commonly used tests include 1. Monotone rule. Origin, established in the mid-19th century in England. Criteria. The defendant is considered legally insane if, at the time of the crime, they were suffering from a mental defect or illness that either prevented them from understanding the nature and quality of their actions or prevented them from knowing that what they were doing was wrong. 2. Irresistible impulse test criteria. The defendant is considered legally insane if, due to a mental illness, they were unable to control their actions or conform their behavior to the law, even if they understood their actions were wrong. 3. Durham rule or product test. Criteria. The defendant is considered legally insane if their unlawful actions were the direct result of a mental disease or defect. Limitations. Rarely used today due to its broad interpretation and potential for abuse. 4. Model Penal Code, MPC. Test criteria. The defendant is considered legally insane if, at the time of the crime, due to a mental disease or defect, they lacked substantial capacity either to appreciate the criminality, wrongfulness of their conduct, or conform their conduct to the requirements of the law. 5. Guilty but mentally ill, GBMI. Alternative verdict. Some jurisdictions allow for a GBMI verdict, where the defendant is found guilty of the offense, but is also determined to be mentally ill at the time of the crime. This ensures that the defendant receives mental health treatment while serving their sentence. Procedure for raising the insanity defense. 1. Notification and plea. Notice requirement. The defense must notify the court and prosecution of their intention to raise the insanity defense, often well before the trial begins. Formal plea. In some jurisdictions, the defendant must enter a formal plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI. 2. Psychiatric evaluation competency, evaluation. The court may order a psychiatric evaluation to determine the defendant's competence to stand trial, ensuring they can understand the proceedings and assist in their defense. Insanity evaluation. A separate evaluation assesses the defendant's mental state at the time of the crime, conducted by mental health experts. 3. Evidentiary requirements. Burden of proof. Depending on the jurisdiction, the burden of proving insanity may rest with the defense, preponderance of the evidence, or the prosecution may need to disprove it, beyond a reasonable doubt. Expert testimony. Both the defense and prosecution may present expert testimony from mental health professionals regarding the defendant's sanity. 4. Trial and verdict. Presentation of defense. During the trial, the defense presents evidence and arguments supporting the insanity claim, while the prosecution challenges this evidence. Jury instructions. The judge provides specific instructions to the jury on how to consider the insanity defense and the applicable legal standards. Possible verdicts. The jury may render one of several possible verdicts, including guilty not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI, or guilty but mentally ill, GBMI. Implications of an insanity verdict. 1. Not guilty by reason of insanity, NGRI. Commitment to mental health facility. Defendants found NGRI are typically committed to a psychiatric facility for treatment, rather than being sentenced to prison. Duration of commitment. The duration of confinement in a mental health facility can vary and may be indefinite, subject to regular reviews of the defendant's mental condition and dangerousness. Conditional release. Some defendants may be eligible for conditional release, under strict supervision and ongoing treatment, if they are deemed no longer a threat to themselves or others. 2. Guilty but mentally ill, GBMI. Incarceration and treatment. Defendants found GBMI are sentenced to incarceration, but are also provided with psychiatric treatment during their imprisonment. Post-release supervision. Following release, defendants may be subject to continued mental health treatment and supervision to ensure compliance and stability.